Follow me and I promise you glory and adventure. Follow me, and I promise that if you fall, your name will be sung for as long as the sons of Russ walk the stars.
The Adeptus Astartes are led by among the most wise, powerful, and fearsome souls of the Imperium. Exemplars of their Primarch's vaunted legacy, each chapter master bears responsibility for their kinsman's survival, especially during this era of the Dark Imperium. For today, we shall elucidate among the oldest and most revered warriors of the Imperium. His deeds made fought alongside countless legends of war, far in excess of any of his peers. The High King of the Vilka Fenrica, Logan Grimnar. Though few records pertain to the Great Wolf's initiation into the rout, all who bore witness to his early service saw within this son of Russ the beginnings of greatness. Drawn from the Ironblood tribe of Fenris during 313.M41, recruiters of the chapter observed the young warrior fighting both the rival Icefang and Sea Devil tribes within the treacherous boiling ocean. Such are the perils of Fenris that all fight for land to ensure their survival, its scarcity forcing tribes to embark upon longboats for spoils anew, as the domains outside the only stable landmass of Azerheim constantly shift with the seasons. The sea of blades of this death world, on rare occasions spewing forth long-forgotten ruins replete with precious treasures ripe for the picking. The voyage of the Ironblood tribe, alongside allies of the Tidehounds, set anchor on the site they sailed hard to reach. Ambushed within the ruined temple made to worship the Death Wolf, Morkai, as each of Logan's comrades in arms fell, a rune priest of the Sky Warriors and his protege, Ulrich, watched the Fenrisian's axe carve through all who attempted to add him to their tally. Having tracked the promising aspirant for days of his exploits, the Space Wolves watched as he faced the Sea Devils, Chieftain Thorgil Icetooth, and his Kraken Guard in battle. Logan with vengeance in his heart for his fallen Ironbloods, sundering a dozen of his foes before being challenged by Thorgil to a duel. Exchanging blows atop the piled corpses of the slain, Logan's axe bit deep into the skull of the Icetooth, the Rune Priest seeing within his aura the shadow of greatness, uttering a prayer to the Allfather for the blessings bestowed upon the youth. Alone, surrounded by the mangled corpses of his slain kin and foes alike, the Sky Warriors offered their hand to the son of the Ironbloods, leaving his former life behind. His kin which scouted the ruins of Morkai, finding no sign of their exemplar. Upon Logan's induction into the chapter, the already battle-proven Ulrich perceived within the Ironblood a weird of singular power, as during his trial of Morkai, Grimnar slew the ice troll, Frostblood. Avenging the death of over a dozen recruits who had fallen to the beast, Logan drove a broken bone into the troll's eye as he howled in triumph, regardless of the creature's attempts to bite his arm off to stave off the killing blow. Assigned to Asvald Stormrack's great company, with his trials completed, though Logan's valor would be ever galvanized, his jests and charisma quickly won over even his more begrudging senior kin during the era of the rule of Great Wolf Grimfang, as he soon earned promotion to the rank of Grey Hunter. Victorious at the Battle of Bloodfalls during 357.M41, Grimnar saved the life of his Wolflord while trapped under the wreck of a Hellbrute, single-handedly facing the renegade Astartes of the Blood Crescent warband. His heroic deeds earning him the right to serve within the Wolfguard of Asvald. After a century of experience, his counsel proved invaluable, as the Wolf Priests continued to monitor his progression through the ranks. Learning the histories of the chapter and bitter histories of their Legion of Old's deeds from Ulrich, the Slayer would remark,
"The shadow of Russ follows this one, like none I have ever seen. He will be the fate of the chapter, each woven with the other."
Fighting by the side of legendary heroes such as Lord Solar Macarius during his pursuit for the relic known as the Fist of Russ, Logan's intervention preventing the Eldar Xenos from cloning a Primarch using tissue samples from this supposed weapon of the Wolf King would prevent such calamitous heresy. Aiding High Inquisitor Hieronymus Drake as they located what was in fact the Fist of Demetrius. Their reunion, hunting the renegade general, Richter, upon the world of Loki while in possession of an amulet infused with the powers of Nurgle, earned many glories for the upstart Wolf. Yet soon his rise to the position of High King would begin, an appointment won during a war which many scholars of the Imperium wish had never sullied the pages of history. During 415.M41, orcs beset the Cyclopean Rift upon Xylor 9, ending the life of Jarl Asvald, his great company bereft of leadership after 10 years of bitter conflict. Slain by orc war boss Dakfang within the bridge maze of Xylor Primus, Logan ended the life of the wounded Greenskin before his unanimous vote to stand as the new Wolf Lord. His tenure of 25 years as Jarl eclipsed with the murder of the incumbent Great Wolf Sigvald Grimhammer by a dark Eldar succubus upon the world of Zor. Though Logan's Wolflord contemporaries had centuries more experience under their belts, Ulrich's advisement to promote Grimnar to the position of High King was concurred by every Jarl who cast their vote. Armed with a fierce panoply of relic Terminator armor, clad in the skull and cloak of the infamous Fenrisian wolf, Fellclaw, the gilded hide of the beast slain during his youth has been worn with pride for centuries. Bearing the badge of office of the Jarls, a belt of Russ forged by Iron Priest Steph Blacksoul, Logan's Avalanche Pattern Stormbolter further exemplifies the craftsmanship of the Iron Priests. Choosing the emblem of the Night Runner as the personal heraldry of his great company, the wolf that stalks between stars, once worn by the Wolf King himself, would proudly emblazon Logan's panoply for centuries to come. Beginning his reign, which would exceed half a millennia, as was the unprecedented legacy of this already legendary warrior, his first campaign, fought during his tenure, would be that of the First War for Armageddon. Enacted during 444.M41 upon the hive world of Armageddon, an uprising of millions of Chaos cultists sought to summon thralls of the Blood God to drench its innocence in slaughter. A key munitions manufacturer for the Imperium's eternal war effort, the Space Wolves stood as the only chapter to ally with the Steel Legion Defenders and Planetary Defense Force. Staving off the onslaught of the Red Angel, Angron, hordes of World Eaters, led by the Demon Prince's 12 personal champions, the Cruor Praetoria, spewed from the Eye of Terror to unleash carnage upon the populace. Claiming a weapon from the Chaos Champion of the Blood God, Akor Doomflayer, during the conflict, Logan beheld the weapon which had slain numerous of his Wolf Guard during the battle, and upon returning to his chapter, would have it reforged into the likeness of the visage of the Death Wolf. Unleashing its bane for sorceries as its never-dulling edge bit deep into Logan's foes, this fierce blade, known henceforth as the Axe of Morkai, would prove a mighty superior replacement for Logan's Frostblade, which had shattered on impact during the exchange with Doomflayer. Approving of the means to which Logan had sundered Akor, Khorne witnessed Logan rip off his champion's helmet before sinking his fangs into the neck of his opponent to tear out his throat. Millions of corpses piled high upon the killing fields of the planet, as servants of the Taker of Skulls made altars to its glory. Their mission to corrupt the Hive World into a grim abattoir, thwarted with the intervention of another, more clandestine chapter of the Astartes, the Grey Knights. Grimnar's knowledge of their existence, as was permitted as a chapter master, allowing him to request aid to drive the taint of chaos from Armageddon's domains. The Chamber Militant of the Ordo Malleus, when combined with the savage fury of the Vilka Fenrica, quickly purged the world of invaders. Banishing the Red Angel at the cost of many lives, Inquisitor Lord Gesme Kisnoros looked upon the deeds made by his gleaming knights and the High King's defense of the River Chiron. Unwilling to allow the populace to propagate the horrors they had witnessed to once more escalate to a resurgence of corruption. Following the victory of the Imperial Coalition, Kisnoros ordered the Grey Knights to enact the Armageddon containment protocols. Ignoring the warnings of Logan Grimnar, whose compassion was evident by his deployments to minimize civilian casualties, the Inquisition's reasoning that the death of millions would prevent billions of future losses alike to the aftermath of the Horus Heresy did little to stay the Great Wolf's hand. Confining the entire civilian population within Adeptus Arbites work camps, the Inquisition sterilized their captives to prevent chaos mutations from spreading. The Steel Legion and Planetary Defense Forces who had fought bravely to defend their homeworld were liquidated, as Kisnoros oversaw the purge of the planet from his commandeered flagship, Corel's Hope. Stormtroopers evacuated the Hive cities offering vaccination injections, which in truth sterilized those naive enough to trust the agents of the Inquisition. The remaining Space Wolves forces, outnumbered by 100,000 of the Schola Progenium's elite, on the ground. Yet within orbit, the Rout's fleet bore 16 Voidcraft to the Inquisition's 12. Their more rugged design, outfitted for all manner of war zones, providing better armor, weapons, and sheer mass. Loading all available Space Wolves transports with civilians to prevent their submission to the grim alternative. The first of their number, the Trident of Ilmathar, voyaging to the Armageddon system's Mandeville Point, escorted by the frigate Runefire. Intercepted by the Grey Knight's frigate, Carabella, which disabled their warp drives, the Titans of Saturn set upon the Trident, killing 400,000 passengers as they enacted the first act of aggression against the Space Wolves. Unwilling to add to the enormous casualty rate already begun, Logan Grimnar ordered all remaining transports to muster at the side of his amassed fleet, the route's superior might directly shielding their charges within the Inquisition's line of fire. Kisnoros preparing to order his Voidcraft to fire upon all escorts of the Space Wolves' fleet and target all transports when capable. The arrival of the Space Wolves' battle barge, Gilfaheim, promised annihilation to the High Inquisitor and his forces should they commit further atrocities. Demanding Kisnoros to cease hostilities, reluctantly, the Lord Inquisitor acceded to the High King, the transport safely translating through the warp under the protection of the route. Initiating contingencies to harass any who gave sanctuary to the escaping transport ships, Kisnoros promised to cleanse all who flagrantly ignored the decrees of the Inquisition. His far-ranging armada, enacting exterminatus on several worlds, proven to harbour the escaped souls of Armageddon. The flagship of the Grey Knight's Eighth Brotherhood, Fire of Dawn, under the command of Grandmaster Joros, pursuing those who escaped the purge of the Hive World. His advisements to always confront the Space Wolves from a position of strength would prove to be his downfall. The events of the disastrous campaign, regarded by the Fenrisian Inquisitor, Annika Jarlsdottir, as the Mumps of Shame. This daughter of the route's homeworld made great pains to record that never had the chapter of her half returned fire throughout the conflict. Dissent escalating as tensions rose to a fever pitch after 5 months of hostilities, Logan Grimnar made his reprisal, an act which belied the brutal efficiency to which his chapter, under his guidance, is known to this day. Grandmaster Joros advising to Kisnoros that they capture the High King to force the Vilka Fenrika into capitulation. Under the guise of a parley, the commanders of the campaign would meet within the neutral star system of Haikaran. Arriving in system aboard his flagship, Scramasaex, Kisnoros' containment fleet opened fire upon Logan's strike cruiser, critically damaging the Voidcraft and destroying all 4 of his escort vessels, losing all hands. Inviting Grimnar to discuss terms of surrender, Logan feigned agreement to Kisnoros' demands, and with his Wolfguard by his side, travelled to the bridge of the Fire of Dawn. Asking who had broken the sacred oath of armistice within the presence of every Inquisitor and Grey Knight's commander of the campaign, Grandmaster Joros' admission to his culpability would be the last act he would ever make. Decapitating Joros with blinding speed, Logan's immense axe of Morkai ended the life of the Grandmaster as his Wolfguard targeted the 4 Grey Knight Justicars, attempting to block their teleportation devices. Teleporting back to the Scramasaex, the route withdrew from the false parley, their return to their fleet swiftly followed by hostile acts made by the Space Wolves. Now unrestrained of their fury, the chapter began to target the containment fleets of the Inquisition, destroying several Grey Knight's Voidcraft, including the venerated First Brotherhood relic, the Glaive of Janus. Sundering 50 Grey Knights veterans with the destruction of the ancient warship, elements of the Red Hunters chapter of Astartes aided the plight of their masters, Chapter Master Daemar pledging his entire chapter fleet and his gargantuan battle barge in sacred trust to the disposal of the Grey Knights. Casualties on both sides began to mount as the victims of Armageddon rose to the billions, the Inquisition's efforts to contain the survivors now impossible thanks to the cunning maneuvers of the rout. A hollow victory in every sense of the term. Millions of innocents had perished indirectly due to the Space Wolves' actions. Conspiracies to assassinate Kisnoros supported by commanders such as Jarlsdottir and the Grey Knight, Hyperion. The Red Hunters beginning to sideline the Grey Knights as the most fervent chapter in support of the Inquisition's actions. Despite their efforts, after 8 months of conflict, the Inquisitor Lord abandoned all efforts to contain Armageddon. Attempting a last-ditch effort to save face, Kisnoros commanded his fleet to engage hostilities against the homeworld of the Vilka Fenrika. His attempt to hold Fenris hostage, rooting deep the animosity felt by Grimnar and his men to the organization, which remains eternally woven into their chapter's collective psyche. The Inquisitor's fleet besetting the Space Wolves' fortress monastery, the Fang, with orbital bombardment. With the vast majority of its chapter on campaign, the Ayat was all but defenseless against such overwhelming firepower. Ordering the Bladebreaker, Hyperion, with Inquisitor Jarlsdottir to join him to parley with an authority on the planet, the ancient dreadnought Björn the Fell-Handed met with the delegation once awakened from his deep slumber. Revered as a living companion of the Space Wolves Primarch, Leman Russ, Kisnaros nonetheless decreed that only a penitent crusade to absolve themselves of shame was a fitting means to expiate the Space Wolves' sins. Unimpressed by the bureaucratic Inquisitor Lord's arrogance, Bjorn bought time for Logan's fleet to translate in system, as the delegation fled the wrath of the ancient Great Wolf. Unable to ensure a peaceful resolution with Logan upon his return to his flagship, Kisnaros' fleet fired upon the Space Wolves, pincered between the ships in the skies and the gun batteries below. Logan and his Wolf Guard teleporting to the bridge of the battlecruiser, Grimnar's axe decapitated the Lord Inquisitor, ending his reign of bloodshed before unleashing his wrath upon those left standing. The rampage of the High King ended with the intervention of the Fell-Handed. As the massive dreadnought teleported to the Coral's Hope Bridge, his proclamation to "stop this madness" saw to the conflict's timely conclusion. Mediating a truce between the Grey Knights, Red Hunters, Inquisition and Space Wolves, Bjorn warned Jarlsdotter and Hyperion that never again would inquisitorial vessels be permitted to enter the Fenris system. Refusing to mind-wipe those who had served alongside the Grey Knights to preserve their enigmatic status, the Rout would not bargain with the chapter responsible for so many needless deaths. The Fang having suffered damages far greater than those inflicted by Magnus the Red during his invasion of the 32nd millennium, all chapters present withdrew to replenish their losses. Grimnar's pedigree as Great Wolf had begun with calamity, a conflict escalating to the point of bringing his creed close to annihilation. Yet centuries of service still approached on the horizon, and the Shadow of Russ would not stand idle as the fortunes of his chapter continued to sour. Further cementing his reputation during the Palacia Heresy of 499.M41, Purge of the Space Hulk Well of Darkness during 539.M41, and Scouring of Gnosis Secundus of 787.M41, even the traditional Great Hunt, now the 30th in its name, made in search of the Primarch of yore, bore many victories against a myriad of foes. Undiminished by age as he rides atop his chariot, Stormrider, the sight of the old wolf fighting at the vanguard of his champions of Fenris is truly a sight to behold. His personal war council, comprised of exemplars of his chapter's priesthood, his mentor, Ulrich the Slayer, as the only able-bodied Astartes to exceed his own tenure, is a reliable fount of wisdom, whilst the more esoteric methods of Njal the Stormcaller draws insight from beyond the Pale. Awakening the first Great Wolf, Bjorn the Fell-Handed on rare occasions which merit his intervention. This ancient connection to their legion of old ensures the chapter never strays too far from the values of their foundation. His chosen Iron Priest, Jens Ironfist, responsible for the maintenance of Stormrider, Logan's panoply, weapons, and even the Land Raider phalanx of his great company, Olaf Skystalker, as the oldest of all scouts, is one of the few to turn down appointment into the Night Runners, as his true calling beckons. The High King's handpicked champions, so widespread they must be assigned into smaller packs of warriors. The Kingsguard, or Claws of Grimnar, accompany the Great Wolf into battle, each specializing in specific methods of waging war. His personal Wolf Guard, comprised of Ranulf Ironfang, Gunnar Redhammer, Uli Dragonsmote, Skard Frostmane, Ingvar Thunderbrow, Volkbad Wolftongue, Runstan Wolfbrother, and Benson Ironjaw. While such warriors remain close to their High King, other bands of the Kingsguard proactively assault his targets. The Shield Brothers, led by the immense champion of Grimnar, Aryak Rockfist, such warriors clad in Terminator armor, form an impenetrable wall between their liege and powerful enemies, forming a mobile fortress of ceramite which plows through enemy lines, alike to an armored longship. The Void Claws of Thorfinn Daggerfist, specializing in sudden teleportation deployments, its members comprised of Elric Doomseeker, Hagrid Weirdfang, Kjarl Hammerfist, and Leifjar Twicelane, exceeding the pedigree of all ship-to-ship fighters within a great company already specializing in such maneuvers. Vanquishing the Necron hordes of Emotek the Stormlord during 988.M41 upon the world of Varloth IV, the following years leading to the close of the 41st millennium proved to be the greatest tests the Great Wolf has faced in his long years of service. Sending 5 great companies in his place to the site of his prior campaigning, the Space Wolves earned many glories during the Third War for Armageddon of 998.M41, as his own forces ventured to Alaric Prime to combat the Red War of Gruk Faceripper within the Sanctus Reach. However, greatest of all sagas made of the Fangfather would be the defense of his homeworld from the ancient nemesis of his chapter, Magnus the Red. Having spent months searching for the remnants of the resurgent Wolfen of their Legion's 13th Great Company of yore, the Great Wolf once more fought by the side of the Grey Knights chapter upon the shrine world of Vicarus. Informed by Brother Captain Arvin Stern of the Wardmaker Third Brotherhood that the fiefdoms of the Space Wolves were under threat, Logan returned to the Kingdom of the Rout, beset by the forces of chaos. Purging the world of Midgardia, beset by the thralls of Nurgle, the cost of destroying the sister planet of Fenris to cleanse the system of chaos corruption weighed heavily on the soul of the Old Wolf. Confronting the Crimson King upon the soil of Fenris, alongside the Ravenwing of the Dark Angels, Might of the Grey Knights, and countless sons of Russ, Logan stalwart Wolflord, Eagle Ironwolf, sacrificed his life to allow the High King a chance at wounding the Demon Primarch. Cleaving through Magnus's armor, with the edge of his Axe of Morkai, the injury inflicted by Logan Grimnar allowed his allies to banish the entity back into the tides of the war, as they reeled from the conflict. Given no respite to salve their wounds, the Rout would once more be called to arms for the final conflict of the time of ending, Grimnar committing what remained of his chapter to aid the defense of Cadia during Abaddon the Despoiler's 13th Black Crusade. Assuming the mantle of Supreme Commander of all forces committed to the Cadian Gate, under Logan Grimnar's leadership, millions of souls were spared from the inevitable doom of the Fortress world. Setting aside the millennia-lasting animosity they had harbored with the Dark Angels chapter, following the trials of the Siege of Fenris, both primogenitors of the Adeptus Astartes deployed to the citadel of Casa Tirok as Black Legion forces sought to break its foundations. Victorious over the forces of chaos, old rivalries proved difficult to let lie, the chapter's parting ways with the battle's conclusion, as the overall objectives of the Despoiler overshadowed the gains made by the Loyalists. Cadia fell as Jarl Sven Bloodhowl gave his life to destroy the Blackstone Fortress, Will of Eternity. Another champion of the High King lost as the sundering of the Bastion of Humanity acted as a catalyst to give birth to the Great Rift across the stars. Returning to his homeworld with less than 1,000 Astartes remaining of his once vast armies, the Rout braced once more for the Wolf Time as the end of days drew near. Seemingly destined to be the last High King of his chapter's legacy, not even the resurgence of the avenging son, Rabute Gilliman, would be seen as a good omen. The Legion Breaker's legacy held in ill regard by the Sons of Russ. Met by an ambassador of the new breed of Primaris Astartes, Lieutenant Arlandus Castelor, the subsequent initiative made by Jarl Crom Dragongaze to accept such ultramarines in wolf's clothing into his great company drove Grimnar to anger. Unproven upstarts, with no concept of the traditions of Fenris, nor deeds made to its glory. Upon inspection of the First Wolves, led by Sergeant Gaius, the deeds of the Iron Oath would in time convince the High King to accept this new breed of warriors into the fold. Now restored to fighting strength, the Space Wolves continue their duty to defend the innocence of the Imperium from the clutches of dreadful foes. Yet hope for the return of the King remains high, for with the prophecy of the Wolf Time promising his resurgence, Logan Grimnar refuses to surrender as the noose tightens around the Imperium's proverbial throat. Standing tall as among humanity's most cherished heroes, whose deeds eclipse every chapter master who currently draws breath, his reign of half a millennia as High King shall not end with a whimper, but a roar of fury. For the bite of the Fang Rider has sundered among the mightiest foes of the Imperium, and should he live to see the return of the Wolf King, doubtless his saga shall herald eternal within the great halls of Fenris.
Logan, the Inquisitor replied. Come now, it's over. Will your chapter really fight on without you?
He laughed, the sound a brutal bark.
Of course, just as your Grey Knights would. We are brothers, us and them. If only one wolf was left alive in all of mankind's Imperium, he'd still defy his enemies until his last breath fell from his broken body. Your knights are the same. I saw it in their eyes when we first met. I saw it when they dueled the great beast of Armageddon. I see it in each of them now. They know the value of blood and tears. You.
He nodded to the diminutive Inquisitor.
Do not. And I wonder if you realize how you scar your Grey Knights' hearts against you by committing them to wars they don't wish to fight.
I felt my mouth open and closed it quietly. Throne of Flame, he made it hard not to admire him.
He reads us like a scroll.
Malkadil sent.
He really does.
My eyes flicked to Lord Joros, his hands resting on his sheathed blades, much in the same way Jarl Grimnar leaned on his axe.
Well, some of us.
Kisnoros was fast losing his feigned patience. Your flagship is lost.
We have other ships.
Your chapter cannot hope to stand against us.
No.
The Great Wolf looked back, over his shoulder, at his men.
The Boy Lord says we can't stand against him.
Strange, my Jarl.
Replied one of the scruffy wolves, a balding warrior with shaggy sideburns.
We were doing well before they wiped their arses with an honorable oath of armistice.
Aye,
Rawthroat agreed.
we were. Perhaps we should invite them to Fenris, Jarl. They'd find a warmer welcome there.
Grimnar nodded to their words, turning back to Joros and Kisnoros.
Tell me, which one of your horse sons gave the order to open fire on our shieldless, weaponless vessels?
It was I.
Said Joros.
It gave me no pleasure, but the deed was done for the greater good.
The Jarl nodded.
I've mocked your face, knight. I'll remember it from now until the wolf time. You have my word on that. No Fenrisian ever forgets one who violates the laws of seized blades and bared throats. Once these laws are broken, all rules of decorum and honor are abandoned. To betray a betrayer is never counted as a sin.
Kisnoros tied his long blonde hair into a ponytail, keeping any stray strands from his face. Enough of this. The Imperium's woes will not bide while we stand here and make superstitious promises. Chapter Master Grimnar, you will surrender as agreed, and your wolves will stand down. Jarl Grimnar gave us his canine smile again, showing wet fangs.
That will not be happening.
This has been a tale of the great Imperium of Man, read by the Remembrancer. The legacy of the High King is regarded by many within the Imperium as quite possibly the most wise and benevolent of all overlords of the Emperor's domains. His wrath restrained, yet never blunted. The Great Wolf's compassion often costs his chapter lives aplenty in actions made to bring sanctuary to the downtrodden. To be an effective leader, one must consider the cost of their actions, for it is the greatest failing of those who bear such a responsibility to be right rather than effective. Should you be burdened influence, control, or authority, take heed to the wisdom of those who made hard decisions prior, for their legacy is forged with the need to balance virtues of conflicting outcomes. For it is by no means easy to gauge the most righteous course without sowing further calamity. So always gather myriad perspectives before charting your course.